There is a reason why I think you should allow yourself to come back to books and not just put a book in a place, because that's what happened to me with Beloved. I first came across Beloved, I think I was in my 20s when I first came across Beloved. I read not a lot of it and I put it down. And it just wasn't for me. The genre, I think, just wasn't for me. And I wasn't in a space in my life where I wanted to push myself, per se. But when my friend, and I will also say that I didn't have a need to like go back to it. I didn't think about Beloved. I know there's, I think, a movie, but it wasn't something that really, I was like, I need to go back and read this book. So I'm so grateful for the invitation to read this book with a friend. And he was like, we're going to read this book. We started off with Jazz, and Jazz is the second book in the Beloved trilogy by Toni Morrison. I loved Jazz. I think I did a book review and I definitely did a conversation. I will link that in the show notes below if you want to check those out. And after we read Jazz, we then were like, okay, we're going to read Beloved together and talk about that. And I was way more nervous to read Beloved, but I'm glad that I did. And I'm really glad that I read Jazz first, that I read it out of order. This connected trilogy, you do not have to read it in order. You will not feel lost. I don't think that you will be penalized in any way if you read it out of order like I did. So I'm actually very happy that we started off with Jazz and then I went back and read Beloved. And of course, we're going to finish by reading Paradise Lost. So today, I just want to talk to you a little bit about Beloved, share with you some of my experiences reading it, and yeah, have a conversation with you all about it. Um, there are no spoilers. I'm not going to spoil it. It is a very popular, well read story, so I'm sure that you probably have heard something about Beloved. So I'm not going to spend so much time on like giving an overview of the summary of what the story is about. But I think I want to spend more time discussing or sharing like my experience reading it. Maybe I want to do that. I don't know. I don't have my thoughts all together for this one. So it makes it a little bit hard to do. So, just to kind of give a little bit of background and context, Beloved was published in 1987, again by author Toni Morrison. And it is inspired by, in part, a true story of a slave woman, Margaret Garner, who went through desperate, desperate acts that really just defies motherhood, right? So, these just very desperate acts to, in her mind, save her children from the grips of slavery. And when Toni Morrison read this story, and in her foreword to the novel, which I read and I really appreciated, she said that she was drawn to the story. She was drawn to a mother who killed one of her children in order to have that child not experience the realities of slavery. She tried to do the same with her others, but one was the only one that she managed to actually kill. And she did it sane, and she did it without a repentant heart. There was sanity in her choice. She knew what she was choosing. She knew why she was choosing it. And although she felt sadness, um, there wasn't like this repentance heart. It wasn't the story of this insane woman who lost her mind, killed her children. It was very intentional. And freedom is what she wanted for herself, and freedom was what she wanted for her children. And this is the way that she felt like they would actually experience freedom. And so this story becomes a catalyst, or became a catalyst for Toni Morrison to write Beloved. And she said that she wants the reader to be kidnapped and thrown into this alien world. And my experience of reading this story was definitely that I was kidnapped and I was thrown into an alien world, not only because it was a world that set in the past. That's not so much why it was alien to me, as I have done a lot of study and I have a lot of knowledge because I've read a lot of things and I studied a lot of things when it comes to slavery and time periods coming out of slavery. So that wasn't so much what was alien to me. I think what was alien to me is the the mystical aspect of it, the ghost aspect of it, as Beloved, the daughter that was killed, is comes back and inhabits this house and this world that mom Sethe and her sister, so Sethe's other daughter Denver, inhabit. And I don't really read a lot of ghost stories. And so that kind of element was alien, that was the kind of alien part to me. But I think that this alien part, this other character who's present always and then becomes present in different forms, allowed for a connected bridge to have a conversation not only about the effects of slavery and the trauma to families, the trauma to mother, but also I think that she embodies like the history of millions of people, millions of slaves that had to endure middle passage, that had to endure the conditions of slavery. And so, in a sense, Beloved holds a lot of the memory. And I was fascinated by how Toni Morrison crafted a character that did that. So yeah, we're set in this world. The world is actually very small. It's like a zoomed in world to a house where there's a mother and a daughter, Sethe and Denver. Sethe's sons have left because Sister Ghost is too much for them. And we are in a world of women. And one of the things that I experienced reading this novel at 48. I'm a mother to three. I've nursed all my children, and if you read the story, you'll see the relevance of that. Why I say that is because it really is it's a story about women, and it's primarily a story about women who were slaves and who were kind of coming out of that. The trauma that was specifically done to women that women had to endure and the legacy of that trauma. And I have not encountered a lot of works that really focused on women in that way, and so I found it to be not only educational, but I found it to be deeply compelling and hard and rich in many ways. And I'm still wrestling with this work. And that's where I am. I think for me, my experience is that I was an observer. I was distant. There were parts of me that, as I was reading Sethe's story, that I didn't I didn't want to be too close. Um, I don't know if there was that offer or extension for me to be really close, or if it's just better for me to kind of be distant. It's maybe emotionally safer for me. I'm still grappling with that, you guys, and I love the fact that this work is making me grapple with all of those things. Um, there are lots of themes that come up. There is memory, and there is the question throughout of what should be remembered, what should be carried on, and what should actually kind of stay buried in relationship to, I think, trauma and the effects that it has, on trauma. There's definitely the theme of mothers and daughters. There is a theme of just the theme of freedom in itself and liberation, and what does it mean to be free, and what are the different vehicles that one can access freedom, and how permanent or fleeting that is. Another theme that is interesting to me is the community and the communal responsibility towards one another. And I think that this is a really kind of interesting look when you're focused on the neighbors, the community kind of at large. Um, there's so much to talk about, and the extreme ways in which mothers will go through. I think fathers too, but this one again is a story that's focused on motherhood. Will go through in order to protect their children. Um, there's lots of conversation about love, love from like a memory, love present, love in motion, and love as a survival, and how love can show up and be exhibited in many different ways. Another one is invention versus recovery. And so the ways in which there's this need to constantly reinvent oneself. I mean, these were people that were coming out of slavery, and the need to reinvent oneself and to throw off this identity that has been saddled upon, Sethe. that's been saddled upon, and to actually step into an identity as a free woman that she had never seen kind of before. And so I think this kind of reinvention and the real struggle it is to reinvent, and the pain that one goes through when you are reinventing, and what recovery could look like within those phases. And so that's really quite interesting. There's I love so much about this work, and I liked the fact that it was kind of like a tapestry, um, as far as the stylistic lens or methods that Toni Morrison used. We have first person, we have some first person moments, we have third person, we have poetry, we have kind of a conversation, like dialogue that's not structured, that's structured in a way where you have to say, like, okay, who's saying what? All of these different elements that come together and to weave together this story that essentially is a very fragmented story. So I think the structure in itself is fragmented and it's varied. And I think it is so symbolic of African American story, which is fragmented, stops and starts and incompletes, and also varied in the sense of you had African slaves who came over who had a variety of different dialects that wasn't even really acknowledged, honored, and was intentionally weaponized against them, right? And it allowed for or created, in some cases, impossible ways for real communication and connection to flow. And eventually, they had to reinvent that, right, or to invent language that was connected for understanding. And so even the structure, I think, is worth noticing and spending time to think about, as it's symbolic so much of the journey of African Americans in this country. Um, so yeah, there's almost too much to say about Beloved. I think that it's a heavy book for sure. So if you have not read it yet, I would, just be mindful that it is a heavy book, but it is also, I think, let me see how many pages it is. It's does it have a page number? It's about 324 pages long, at least my version. This is the softcover version of it. And I would say that it's a quick read. It's heavy, but it's a quick read. You can get through it rather quickly. I really would suggest reading Beloved and having a conversation with it. Like, this is a book that when you read it, no matter who you are coming to this book, you're going to need to discuss it. You're going to need to process it. And there's so much there. I think this is also a book that you're going to benefit from coming back to and reading it again. So I definitely will read Beloved again. This is a book that I will want to read with my daughters and have a conversation and help them kind of through the book for sure. I so appreciated being able to have a conversation with Sean about it, and he just brought a lot of richness to my thinking, and helped me in my thinking as it relates to the book. So this is definitely one that you should get, one that you should read, and one that you should allow yourself to wrestle with, because I think that you will be wrestling. And I want to just say, because I'm not giving anything away by saying this, but I did not wrestle with Sethe killing her child. That's not, so when I'm saying I'm wrestling with it, I'm not wrestling with that, and I don't judge her for that. Um, I am more wrestling with what I was feeling like in noticing my feelings while I was reading this book, and how I didn't want to get too close to her, but also how I feel like, allowed to get too close. Um, how I wanted to be nurtured and mothered by her, I think, and how I wasn't able to, and what wasn't available for me. And I'm saying that in very metaphorical terms, or, in terms and ways. So that's kind of what I'm struggling and wrestling with, and what it's leaving me with. And I'm also Yeah, I'm just wrestling, you guys. That's where I am. Maybe I'll come back if I get to a point where I've landed solidly and I'm no longer wrestling. I might come back and share those thoughts. But for right now, Denver and Sethe and Paul D, and the characters within Beloved in this world, it really is staying with me. And I think in a much different way than Jazz. For me, I didn't wrestle at the end with Jazz, but there is this wrestling that I'm having with Beloved. And I don't mind that. I love when, books stay with me in that way. I also wrote in letter to Sethe. So for those of you all who may not know, I have a Substack page, and sometimes when I read a book, I'm inspired, or just not even inspired. I feel like I have to write a letter to a character, and it's almost like a love letter to a character. And so I did that with Sethe. I will link that letter if you want to check it out in the description box below. So that's all, you guys. I just wanted to pop on and say, share some thoughts. I'm still in process with this book. If you have read Beloved, I would love, love, love to know your thoughts about this book. Please put it in the comment section below. If you have not read it, do yourself a favor, read the book. It is worth the read. I will have a link below where you can purchase this if you want to, while supporting independent bookstores through Bookshop, which is something, a place that I really do love how they support independent bookstores. And you guys, if you want, again, to check out the conversation that I had with Sean about Beloved, you can check that out as well. I will for sure leave that in the show notes below. That is it. Let me know. Let me know in the comments, what you thought about it. And until next time, you guys, stay reading. Bye.